Okay, so tonight we are making cookies. We are making uh, what we call drop cookies. We can drop with using a little scoop, or we can just roll them, or make them just with a little spoon. It's much more consistent to have a scoop. This one is a little too big. It's a gigantic cookie. Uh, and they can be about 2 ounces or so. Okay, this is about 3.5, almost 4. So there are many ways to make cookies. Basically, we do creaming method. Creaming method means I'm creaming my butter that's cold but not cold. It's cold. I'm going to cut my butter into chunks. I have butter, I have salt, pinch of salt. I have sugar. In this case, for the chocolate chip cookie, we have brown sugar, light brown sugar, and regular sugar. We have eggs, and then the dry ingredients. So we're going to start creaming the butter, and that will be probably a minute and a half. And then we are going to add salt and sugar. I like to cream it, not whip it. Okay, so when I'm making cookies, it is really just mixing everything together, but without whipping it. Okay, I don't want it to be a paste. I want to be creamy without losing too much of the cold temperature. That makes a huge difference when they're baking the cookie. So if I over mix the butter, I will end up having a cookie that spreads too much. Okay, it's very important that we have that step done all the way. So that for a minute. Questions? This we never made before, so we might have some questions. We are getting all the sugar, a pinch of salt, or 1 teaspoon of salt. 1 teaspoon. I am adding already the baking powder to the flour. If I'm using cake flour, I'm always sifting the cake flour. Cake flour is the flour that has less protein content and more starch. It means that we will lump. If it makes lumps, we will not dissolve when you're mixing it. Very good. If you want to add a little bit of vanilla, we could add at this point. Just be sure that your butter is completely creamed with your sugar. You don't want to overmix it. Okay? So it's nice to lift and clean the bottom at least one time so you don't have butter staining the bottom, because that butter as well will fry when we bake it. So butter is probably the most tricky ingredient when you're making cookie. You really have to be creamed at the right consistency. That's good. Yeah, put it back. After we cream for another 30 seconds or so, we are going to be adding eggs one at a time. Eggs, it is very nice when we have recipes that call for weight instead of units. I was saying that for eggs, we just leave it a little slower so I can't talk and think at the same time. It could be nice to have eggs weighted instead of units. Yesterday I opened a box of eggs and they say extra large. So an extra large egg, it is about 65 to 70 grams. A regular egg is about, a large egg is about 55 to 60. So if I'm adding 10 eggs, this 10, 15 grams more will be almost adding 2 extra eggs. So if you don't have the large egg, if you only have the extra large or jumbo egg, just go by measurement, okay? Just because you have both of them together and they will be not exactly what you need, what you have to do, you have to break the eggs and then measure, okay? So you don't end up just having one. So we're going to be adding the egg one at a time. Add one egg. Yeah. See that it's completely incorporated. And then you're going to add another egg. The whole mixing process could take about, it shouldn't take more than 5 minutes, okay? If it's taking you more than 5 minutes, you're really over mixing your cookie dough. Another one. After baking for 20 years, I realized a few things. Yeah, almost there. One more. I realized that when I'm making chocolate chip cookie, just because the butter that sticks to the side, it could be a nice idea to add the chocolate chip, because the chocolate chip will just go to the sides and move the butter back in. Another one. Yeah. So I'll show you guys what it's supposed to look like at this point. It's creamy, but you feel the butter is too cold. The mixture is too cold. We are emulsifying it. Eggs and butter, technically they shouldn't combine because one is liquid and the other one is solid. So I don't have any more eggs. I'm gonna add all my chocolate chips and all my flour. This, it's my moment. Maybe I will go back to the old style of, having all the flour and then adding the chocolate chip. But right now, I think it's the best thing we can do, adding all together. Coffee can exacerbate the taste of the chocolate, and it makes it into a nice, very nice and different sort of cookie. So I'm adding probably about half teaspoon of coffee extract. Yeah, thank you. So if you want, at this point, you can put it inside of Ziploc bag or wrap it and accommodate in the freezer. I could say about a month or so. The freezing situation all depends on how many times a day you open your door, what else you keep inside. So everything is together. Be sure that you don't have pieces of butter still. Yep. Thank you. We really have to clean. So we make all the same size. Gigantic chocolate chip cookies. When I'm making cookies and I really don't want to fail, if I have a catering, if I, baking for 2,000 people like I usually do, I will test. So I will probably scoop maybe like 6 or so I see how the cookie is spreading. There are many different ways to judge whatever you're making. So if I'm making a creme brulee, for example, I am judging by texture, by flavor, by the presentation of the creme brulee. If I'm eating or if I'm making a cookie, I'm judging for texture, color, and spreading. The spreading, there are some tables they say, at the very first 2 minutes it's supposed to spread as much, and then the 4 minutes is supposed to spread as much. So everything should be controlled. So again, if I'm making a cookie, just like this cookie is so firm, I don't know how much it's going to spread. I don't like my cookie to be like, too chunky. I like my cookie to be a little, round. I don't want it to be too light. I want it to be a little heavier. So if it's not spreading, after I test the first one, I will just push it down a little bit. Okay? Put it in the fridge and then freeze it. And then I can just bake it frozen. And I will just add maybe a couple more minutes. I like to bake my cookies at 375 for 9 to 10 minutes. I will check the cookie. If I go crazy, usually I like my cookie, still a little moist. It will be another minute or so. Okay? Should be about 10 minutes a cookie. Okay? This is a little bigger, so probably I would say this size about 12 minutes or so. So we're going to be baking, so we see what I mean, how much it spreads when we finish baking it. So when I'm making a huge batch, I will always test for how much is going to spread. If I see that the cookie is not spreading enough, it's either no baking soda enough in the recipe, or it's just the butter that was mixed for too long, or too little. So this looks really perfect. We sort of bake for ourselves. Pretty much Nothing here other than the ham that I really don't eat. Nothing here is not something that I don't like. It's really the way I like to cook. It's my conception. It's my vision. I think when we decide to be chefs, we bring up a lot of our memories, a lot of our taste, our vision to what food represents to us. So this looks like a little cookie that I could have when I was little. Okay, chunky, sort of big, regular. And when we open up, this is still very warm. So when we open up the cookie, we are gonna check the inside. So there is a lot of chocolate, and if you see, there is still a little moisture inside because the cookie is going to dry out. Now it's still, it's still some water. It's just releasing all the water, the liquid inside the recipe in the cookie dough. And after it dries out, if I overbake it, it will be very, very hard and crispy. So if I like it chewy like this and soft, I can't overbake it. If I like it crispy, I overbake it a little. Overbaking for me is not burning. It is really just like a couple more minutes. Okay? So, all right. So let me plate up some cookies. That's a very American thing. Cookies with milk. I could never think about it. Yeah. So, chocolate chip cookies.